This is a Monstera Deliciosa. This one here is also called a Monstera Deliciosa Thai constellation, also known as the Swiss cheese plant or the salad plant. Stunning plants, but it is important to be able to tell when to water your Monstera, because inappropriate watering, like overwatering or underwatering a Monstera, can lead to things like stunted growth, deformed leaves, the edges of the leaves become brown and crispy, or multiple leaves becoming yellow, and then in the worst case scenario, the whole plant can actually die. So it is important to be able to tell, and a Monstera doesn't like to be completely dry between watering, unlike a cacti. A cacti likes to be completely dry. A Monstera is different. It likes the soil to be about 3/4 dry before watering. Now, how do you tell when a Monstera needs to be watered? Well, the first sign is that the leaves start to droop. So the leaves are not standing proud, they're not fanning out, they're actually droopy. That's a first sign that a Monstera needs to be watered. Then the next sign is that the plant's going to end up things like brown edges of the leaves, and it may not be one leaf, it might be multiple leaves, and that makes sense because the edges of the leaves are the furthest away from the roots, so it's the hardest part for the plant to transport water to those areas. And then if the Monstera is left even longer to dry out, you'll get patches of the leaf becoming brown and crispy. Whole leaves might start to become yellow and start to drop off. And then the next thing that will happen is that the stems will start to wilt, and then finally the plant is most likely going to die. So if you notice that your Monstera is looking like that each time, then it's most likely it's time to water your Monstera. Now, the Monstera, they don't like their soil to be completely dry. If you are not sure still if your Monstera needs to be watered, I can't give you a schedule. I can't say a Monstera needs to be watered every single week or every second week. The reason for that is my household conditions, my backyard environment is different compared to yours. So everybody's environment is different. Also, the other part is that the climate could be different, the season could be different. It also depends on the size of the plant, and the pot type and the pot size determines when a Monstera needs to be watered. So sticking to a schedule is, I think, the worst thing can be done, because it varies during the year and everybody's household conditions are different. If you're not sure when to water it, then check your Monstera before watering your Monstera. So there's several ways of checking the soil moisture. You can use something like a moisture meter. Just stick it as far down as possible in the soil there, and it'll give you a reading. And if I'm going to use a moisture meter, then I will water my Monstera just 1 hour before it indicates dryness there. I actually don't water it when it says moist. I don't even water it when it's starting to say it's a bit dry. I actually leave it until it's 1 hour before it's actually dry. The other technique is, if you don't want to use a moisture meter, you can use your own finger. All you need to do is dig down as far as possible in the soil. Remove your finger. If there is moisture in the soil will tend to stick onto the finger rather than falling off. Now, I tend to not want to get my hands that dirty by digging into the soil. So what I tend to do is use a chopstick, and if you don't have a chopstick, you can use any stick you like. Just get the stick, stick it down as far down into the soil, and the advantage of using a stick is that you can go further down into the soil compared to the finger, and go as far down as possible. And once again, if the soil has moisture, the soil is going to tend to stick onto the stick. If the soil is dry, then the soil will fall off. So that can tell you if there's moisture in the soil. And if you're finding that, then the plant doesn't need to be watered. The other part is, if you do leave your Monstera too long between watering, Sometimes what happens is the soil can actually become hydrophobic. So you might find that you are watering your Monstera at the right time, but you're still finding that the leaves are still droopy, the edges of the leaves are still browning. Make sure that the actual soil has not become hydrophobic. And what do I mean by hydrophobic? It means that the actual soil is starting to become resistant and repel the actual water. It's not actually absorbing the water when watering the plant. The soil is actually repelling it. So the soil is actually not holding the moisture. The easiest way to tell if your soil has become hydrophobic is that when you're watering your Monstera, do you find that how much water you give, the water is just naturally draining out of the drainage holes. Like it's actually not holding anything in the pot. That's often a sure sign that the soil has become hydrophobic. And so we need to change the soil from being hydrophobic to hydrophilic. So hydrophilic means that the actual soil is actually going to not repel the water, but actually absorb the water. Now, the easiest way to do this is get a tub, okay? Get a tub, fill it up. I generally fill it 3/4 of a way in the tub, and then putting the Monstera in the tub and leaving it there for half a day. Now, the plant is actually going to be watered by the bottom, so it's called bottom watering. Now, the great thing about this is that you can't really overwater the plant because the plant is going to absorb enough water to actually be properly watered, but it's not going to go over because it's not going to absorb any extra water. And you'll find that you'll need to stop. Usually it takes about half a day, or you find that the water level in the tub stops shrinking down. So if the Monstera still needs to have a bigger drink of water, you'll notice that the water level will continue to come down to the point where it stops. So when you notice that the water level has stopped, it's not shrinking anymore, this is time you can grab your Monstera out of the water tub and then make sure that any excess water in that pot is drained away. Then you can pop it back into your cover pot. So that's how easy it is to bottom water and turn the soil from hydrophobic to hydrophilic. If you happen to be growing your Monstera on a moss pole, fantastic. I love moss poles when growing a Monstera, and it does wonders for this plant because this type of plant will actually grow roots into the sphagnum moss, which is another way for the plant to gain nutrients and water. So if you're growing your Monstera on a moss pole, the easiest way to tell when to water it is to let the sphagnum moss dry before watering. Now, if you let your sphagnum moss dry too much, or it's too extremely dry, then the tip I could give you is that when you actually re-moisten the moss, just slowly pour some water on it. Don't pour it too fast because what will happen is that the water is going to drip away too fast and the sphagnum moss is not going to have time to absorb it. Also, give it about 5 seconds and then re-water the moss pole, the moss again. This way, the actual center of the moss is actually going to absorb the water. So that's the tip I have if you're growing your Monstera on a moss pole. And if, like this plant here, I tend not to water the soil. I just tend to let the moss dry and then water it because this Monstera actually does have roots growing into the moss. Now that's just my tips and techniques there, but if you have your own tips and technique, I'd love to read about it in the comment section down below. If you do have any questions for me, then don't forget to leave it in the comment section down below and I will get back to you. And if you're finding that you're watering your Monstera correctly, but the brown leaves are starting to still become brown, then watch this video here where I explain to you the reasons why Monstera Deliciosa leaves become brown and crispy. I'll see you next video.